Princess Zarathel of the Vortanian Empire stood at the observation deck of her family's massive starship, watching the blue-green planet below with a mixture of curiosity and resignation. Earth looked so small, so insignificant compared to the mighty worlds her people had conquered across 3 galaxies. Yet here she was, about to marry one of its inhabitants as part of a diplomatic alliance her father had arranged. The marriage was purely political, of course. The Vortanian Empire needed Earth's unique position in this sector of space for their ongoing war against the Nethrak Collective. Earth's humans were considered a primitive species by galactic standards, barely having achieved faster-than-light travel just 50 years ago. They were useful as allies, but hardly equals to the mighty Vortanians who had ruled the stars for millennia. Zarathel adjusted her ceremonial robes, the crystalline fabric shimmering with embedded technology that could deflect energy weapons and regulate her body temperature across dozens of different planetary environments. Her violet skin bore the intricate tattoos of royal lineage, each mark telling the story of her ancestors' conquests. At 7 feet tall with 4 arms and telepathic abilities that could crush most minds, she was the perfect example of Vortanian superiority. The human she was to marry was named David Chen. She had received his basic information through diplomatic channels. He was 32 years old, worked as some kind of engineer for Earth's defense force, and had volunteered for this arrangement to help secure his planet's future. The fact that he had volunteered rather than being chosen puzzled her. Most species would have selected their finest warrior or their most brilliant scientist for such an honor. Instead, Earth had sent what appeared to be an ordinary maintenance worker. When David's transport shuttle docked with their vessel, Zarathel made her way to the reception bay with practiced royal dignity. Her 4 arms moved in the traditional welcoming gesture as the airlock hissed open. What stepped through was perhaps the most unremarkable being she had ever seen. David was barely 6 feet tall with plain brown hair and ordinary brown eyes. His simple gray uniform marked him as low-ranking military personnel. He carried a single small bag and looked around the opulent Vortanian ship with wide-eyed wonder. "Like a child seeing their first starship, Your Highness," David said, bowing awkwardly in what was clearly a hastily learned Vortanian greeting. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. "I'm honored to meet you." Zarathel studied him with her enhanced senses. No unusual technological implants, no hidden weapons, no psychic shields or mental barriers that would indicate special training. His life force appeared completely ordinary by galactic standards. She had expected at least some sign of the legendary human adaptability she had heard about. But David seemed utterly average in every measurable way. "Welcome aboard the Sovereign's Will," she replied formally, her own voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked her as royalty. "I trust your journey was comfortable?" David nodded enthusiastically. "Amazing, actually. I've never been in space before. Well, not this far from Earth anyway." He paused, then added with genuine warmth, "I hope we can make this work, Princess. I know it's not exactly a normal situation for either of us." His honesty was refreshing, if naive. Most beings meeting Vortanian royalty for the first time either cowered in fear or schemed for advantage. David just seemed nice, ordinary and nice. Zarathel found herself oddly charmed despite her expectations. Over the following days, as they traveled to the neutral station where their wedding ceremony would take place, Zarathel learned more about her future husband. David was unfailingly polite and genuinely interested in learning about Vortanian culture. He asked thoughtful questions about their history, their technology, and their customs. When she explained the complex political situation that had led to their marriage, he listened carefully and asked how he could best support both their peoples. What struck her most was his complete lack of ambition for power or status. When she offered to share some of the advanced Vortanian technologies with him, he politely declined, saying he preferred to earn knowledge through his own work. When she mentioned the vast wealth and influence he would gain as her consort, he seemed more concerned about whether he would be able to continue his engineering projects. "What exactly do you do as an engineer?" Zarathel asked one evening as they shared dinner in her private quarters. David was struggling with Vortanian eating utensils, which required coordination between multiple appendages. "Oh, I work on various defense projects," David replied modestly, "mostly maintenance and repair work. Nothing too exciting. I fix things when they break and try to improve systems where I can." He finally managed to successfully navigate a bite of exotic Vortanian cuisine. "This is delicious, by the way." What kind of creature is it from? The northern ice stalkers of Vorloth Prime, she answered. They're considered a delicacy because they're nearly impossible to hunt. Their natural armor can withstand most conventional weapons. David nodded appreciatively. Fascinating. The molecular structure must be incredibly complex to achieve that kind of durability. He paused thoughtfully. I wonder if similar properties could be replicated artificially. Zarathel tilted her head, studying him. For someone with no formal scientific training beyond basic human education, David often made surprisingly insightful observations about advanced technologies. Perhaps there was more to Earth's choice of diplomatic representative than she had initially assumed. As their wedding day approached, Zarathel found herself genuinely looking forward to learning more about this quiet, unassuming human who seemed to see wonder in everything around him. She had expected to marry a stranger and maintain a polite but distant relationship for political necessity. Instead, she discovered she was developing a real fondness for David's gentle nature and curious mind. The universe, she reflected, was full of surprises, though she had no idea just how surprised she was about to be. The wedding ceremony took place aboard Diplomatic Station Nexus, a massive neutral facility that orbited between 3 star systems. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness the historic alliance between the Vortanian Empire and Earth. The station's grand ceremonial hall had been decorated with the traditional symbols of both cultures, creating a stunning blend of Vortanian crystal formations and Earth's natural flowers. Zarathel wore the crown of eternal stars, an ancient Vortanian artifact that had been worn by queens for over 10,000 years. The crystalline crown contained fragments from the first star her ancestors had conquered, and it hummed with barely contained energy. Her ceremonial gown was woven from quantum silk that shifted colors based on her emotional state, currently displaying the deep purples and silvers that indicated formal dignity, with hints of nervous anticipation. David stood beside her wearing the finest formal attire Earth could provide, though it looked simple compared to the elaborate garments of the other dignitaries present. He had spent the morning learning the complex Vortanian marriage vows, practicing the pronunciation with an earnestness that had charmed even her normally stern royal advisors. The ceremony proceeded according to ancient traditions. High Priest Veltar intoned the ritual words in Old Vortanian, while hollow crystals recorded everything for the Imperial archives. When it came time for the exchange of bonding crystals, Zarathel presented David with a fragment of her family's lifestone, a gem that would allow them to sense each other's presence across vast distances. In return, David offered her a simple golden ring from Earth, explaining that it had belonged to his grandmother and represented his family's commitment to love and loyalty. The contrast between the two gifts was striking. Her crystal pulsed with advanced technology and cost more than most planets' annual budgets. His ring was worth perhaps a few hundred Earth credits and had no special properties beyond sentimental value. Yet somehow, as David slipped it onto one of her 4 fingers with gentle care, it felt more meaningful than any of the priceless artifacts she owned. As the ceremony concluded and they were declared bonded under both Vortanian and Earth law, Zarathel felt the weight of her new responsibilities settling upon her shoulders. She was now the bridge between 2 very different worlds, married to a being she barely knew, but was beginning to genuinely care for. The reception that followed was a diplomatic masterpiece. Representatives from the Andromedian Council congratulated them on their union. The crystalline ambassadors from the Silicon Nebula sang harmonic blessings that resonated through the station's hall. Even the normally reclusive quantum entities materialized briefly to offer their approval of the alliance. David handled it all with remarkable grace for someone who had never attended a galactic diplomatic function before. He listened more than he spoke, asked respectful questions, and somehow managed to avoid any major cultural missteps. Zarathel watched him navigate conversations with beings who could incinerate him with a thought, and his genuine interest in learning about their cultures seemed to charm even the most suspicious delegates. "Your husband is not what I expected from a human representative," commented Ambassador Thexnor of the Centauri hegemony. The massive insectoid being's compound eyes glittered with amusement. Most species would have sent their finest warrior or most brilliant scientist for such an important alliance. "David has his own strengths," Zarathel replied diplomatically, though privately she wondered the same thing. What had Earth's leadership seen in this quiet engineer that made them choose him for such a crucial role? Later that evening, after the formal celebrations had ended, Zarathel and David found themselves alone in their new shared quarters aboard her personal ship. The space had been redesigned to accommodate both their needs, with sections adjusted for human environmental preferences alongside Vortanian living areas. "That was incredible," David said, loosening his formal collar as he looked out at the stars visible through the panoramic viewport. "I never imagined I'd be part of something like this. The technology here, the different species, the history behind it all. It's like living in a dream." Zarathel studied her new husband as he gazed out at the cosmos with wonder still evident in his eyes. "David, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. We're married now, right? I figure we should be able to talk about anything. Why did you volunteer for this arrangement? You could have had a normal life on Earth, found love naturally, built a career. Instead, you chose to marry an alien princess you'd never met and leave your entire world behind. I don't understand your motivation." David was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "I suppose it started with my work," he said finally. "When I learned about the threat the Nethrak Collective posed to our region of space, I realized that Earth needed this alliance to survive. But more than that," he turned to face her, his ordinary brown eyes holding unexpected depth. "I've always believed that when you have the ability to help protect people, you have the responsibility to do it, even if it means sacrificing your own comfort. That's remarkably noble for someone in a maintenance position," Zarathel observed. David smiled, and for just a moment something flickered behind his expression, too quick for her enhanced senses to catch. "I guess I just care about doing the right thing, even if I'm not particularly special myself." As they settled into their new life together over the following weeks, Zarathel continued to observe her husband with growing curiosity. David threw himself into learning about Vortanian technology and culture, with an enthusiasm that seemed to go beyond mere politeness. He asked detailed questions about their faster-than-light communication systems, their energy manipulation techniques, and their military technologies that suggested a deeper understanding than his background should have provided. More puzzling still were the small incidents that began to occur around him. Equipment that had been malfunctioning for years suddenly started working perfectly after David had taken a look at it. Navigation errors that had plagued their ship mysteriously corrected themselves after he'd spent time in the computer core, supposedly just familiarizing himself with the layout. When she asked him about these improvements, he would smile and suggest that maybe Vortanian technology was more intuitive than she'd thought. 3 months into their marriage, as they traveled toward the front lines where Zarathel would take command of a battle fleet, she was beginning to suspect that her ordinary human husband might not be quite as ordinary as he appeared. But the universe was about to provide a much more dramatic revelation than even she was prepared for. The attack came without warning while they slept. Zarathel woke to the ship's emergency klaxons blaring and red warning lights flooding their quarters. The deck plates beneath her feet vibrated with the distinctive harmonic resonance of Nethrak energy weapons striking their shields. Through their viewport, she could see the twisted black shapes of enemy vessels emerging from hyperspace, like predatory shadows. "Battle stations. All hands to battle stations," the ship's communications officer announced through the intercom. "Nethrak attack fleet detected. Estimate 30 vessels of destroyer class or higher." Zarathel rolled out of bed and began pulling on her combat armor with practiced efficiency. As a princess of the Vortanian Empire, she had trained for warfare since childhood and had led successful battles against pirates and rebels. But the Nethrak Collective was different. They were an ancient enemy whose biotechnology could adapt to almost any weapon, making them incredibly dangerous opponents. "How many ships do we have in our escort fleet?" David asked, his voice remarkably calm for someone experiencing his first space battle. 12 heavy cruisers and support vessels," Zarathel replied as she sealed her helmet interface. "We're outnumbered, but Vortanian ships are superior to Nethrak technology. We should be able to hold them off until reinforcements arrive." Even as she said it, she felt a knot of worry in her stomach. 30 Nethrak ships was a massive force for a raid this deep in Imperial space. The ship shuddered under another impact, stronger this time. Through her armor's tactical display, Zarathel could see their shield strength dropping faster than it should. The Nethrak had developed new weapons since their last encounter. I need to get to the bridge and coordinate our defense, she said, moving toward the door. There's an emergency shelter 3 decks down where you'll be safe. I'd rather help if I can, David said, following her into the corridor. Other crew members were rushing past them toward their assigned stations, their faces grim with determination. Zarathel paused. Her husband had no military training and no experience with advanced weapons systems. In a battle like this, untrained personnel were more hindrance than help. David, I appreciate your courage, but this is going to be extremely dangerous. The bridge is a primary target and you don't have any combat experience. Maybe I could help in engineering. I'm an engineer after all. Even if your technology is more advanced than Earth's, basic principles might be similar. Before Zarathel could respond, another massive impact rocked the ship, this time followed by the ominous sound of hull plating being torn apart. Emergency force fields activated automatically to seal a breach somewhere in the lower decks. Princess, Commander Vorthak's voice crackled through her personal communicator. We need you on the bridge immediately. The Nethrak ships are using some kind of new adaptive shielding. Our weapons are barely scratching them. Zarathel made a quick decision. Fine, but you stay in engineering and help where you can. Don't do anything dangerous. She gave David a quick kiss, tasting fear and adrenaline, then rushed toward the nearest transport tube. The bridge was controlled chaos when she arrived. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation in 3 dimensions, with red enemy markers swarming around the blue icons of their own fleet. The Nethrak ships moved in perfect coordination, their organic-looking hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Report, Zarathel commanded as she took her position at the command station. The enemy fleet appeared simultaneously at multiple points around us, Commander Vorthak explained. No hyperspace signatures detected before their arrival. Their ships appear to be using some form of organic stealth technology we haven't encountered before. Damage report? Shield generators at 60%. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Sealed with emergency barriers. Engineering reports power fluctuations in the main energy grid. Zarathel studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Nethrak ships were maintaining perfect formation, while systematically targeting the weakest vessels in her escort fleet. Already 2 of their destroyers were drifting powerless, their crews evacuating to rescue ships. The enemy was picking them apart with surgical precision. All ships implement defensive pattern Omega, she ordered. Focus fire on their command vessel. The large Nethrak ship at the center of their formation was obviously coordinating the attack. If they could disable it, the others might lose their tactical advantage. For several minutes, the space battle raged with deadly beauty. Energy beams lanced through the darkness while missile swarms exploded in brilliant flowers of light. The Vortanian ships fought with skill and courage, but the Nethrak adaptive technology was proving devastatingly effective. Every time their weapons began to penetrate enemy shields, the Nethrak defenses shifted to counter the attack. Princess, we're losing main power to the forward batteries, the weapons officer reported. Engineering says there's some kind of cascade failure in the primary energy conduits. Zarathel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental systems. Without their main weapons, they would be helpless against the Nethrak assault. Can they repair it? They're trying, but the damage is extensive. Chief Engineer Kolthon estimates at least 2 hours for emergency repairs. They didn't have 2 hours. At their current rate of shield degradation, the Nethrak would break through their defenses within 30 minutes. Zarathel opened a communication channel to the engine room, hoping to coordinate some kind of emergency solution. But when the channel opened, what she heard made her freeze in complete shock. David to all stations. Her husband's voice came through the ship's communication system with crisp authority. I'm implementing emergency power rerouting through auxiliary channels. All department heads prepare for full system restart in 60 seconds. Engineering teams stand by for my mark. The voice was still David's, but something fundamental had changed. Gone was the hesitant, wondering tone of the curious maintenance worker she had married. This was the voice of someone who commanded fleets and made life-or-death decisions as naturally as breathing. Who authorized civilian access to ship-wide communications? Commander Vorthak demanded. Before anyone could respond, every system on the ship went dark for exactly 3 seconds. Then the lights returned, brighter than before. The tactical displays flickered back online, showing shield strength climbing rapidly. The weapon stations chimed as full power returned to all battery arrays. All stations report ready. David's voice continued with the same impossible authority. Princess Zarathel, you now have full weapons power and enhanced shield capacity. I recommend targeting the Nethrak command ship's bio-neural interface nodes. Coordinates uploading to your tactical display now. Zarathel stared at the coordinates that appeared on her screen with perfect precision. The locations David had identified were supposedly invisible weak points in Nethrak ship design. Information that was classified at the highest levels of Vortanian military intelligence. Her ordinary maintenance worker husband had just performed miracles with their ship's systems and was providing tactical intelligence that shouldn't exist. The universe had just revealed that everything she thought she knew about David Chen was completely wrong. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of newly optimized systems. Every officer stared at the tactical display where David's targeting coordinates glowed with impossible precision. Zarathel felt her world shifting beneath her feet as she processed what had just happened. Her quiet, unassuming husband had somehow transformed their crippled ship into a weapon of devastating efficiency. Fire all batteries at the designated coordinates, she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. The ship's enhanced weapons arrays unleashed a coordinated barrage that struck the Nethrak command vessel exactly where David had indicated. The alien ship's bioluminescent hull flickered and dimmed as critical systems failed. Within seconds, the entire enemy formation began to lose cohesion as their central coordination network collapsed. Impossible, breathed Commander Vorthak. Those targeting points were theoretically identified in our intelligence reports, but no one has ever successfully located them during active combat. David to bridge, came the voice that sounded like her husband but carried authority that made seasoned military officers straighten unconsciously. The Nethrak fleet will attempt to retreat using their quantum tunneling drives in approximately 90 seconds. If you can disable their escape route, we can capture their vessels intact for intelligence analysis. Zarathel activated her personal communicator with hands that trembled slightly. David, how do you know about quantum tunneling drives? That technology is classified beyond top-secret clearance levels. There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. When David responded, his voice carried a note of gentle apology that was achingly familiar. I promise I'll explain everything as soon as this battle is over. Right now we need to focus on saving lives. Trust me, please. Despite her shock and confusion, Zarathel found she did trust him. Whatever secrets David had been keeping, his actions were clearly aimed at protecting her people. What do you need us to do? Generate a coherent tachyon pulse at frequency 847.3 terahertz, targeted at the space between their ships. It will create quantum interference that disrupts their tunnel formation. We don't have equipment capable of generating coherent tachyon pulses, the science officer protested. That would require technology we haven't developed yet. Actually, David's voice carried a hint of his old wondering tone. You do. Your deflector arrays can be reconfigured to produce the exact frequency needed. I'm uploading the modification protocols to your engineering station now. The engineering displays lit up with complex diagrams that made the technical officers gasp in amazement. The modifications David proposed were elegant in their simplicity, using existing Vortanian technology in ways that had never been considered before. These calculations are brilliant, the chief science officer whispered. Why didn't we think of this ourselves? Within minutes, the ship's deflector array had been reconfigured according to David's specifications. The tachyon pulse fired just as the Nethrak ships began their retreat sequence, causing their quantum tunneling drives to fail catastrophically. Instead of escaping, the enemy vessels found themselves trapped in normal space with disabled propulsion systems. All Nethrak ships are surrendering, the communications officer reported with amazement. They're requesting terms under the Galactic Convention of Warfare. As the immediate crisis ended and damage control teams began their work, Zarathel made her way down to the engineering section with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She needed answers, and she suspected they would change everything about their relationship. She found David in the main engine room, standing before a holographic display that showed the ship's power systems in perfect optimization. His back was turned to her, but she could sense the tension in his shoulders. When he heard her footsteps, he turned around, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw her husband without any masks or pretenses. His brown eyes held depths of knowledge and experience that seemed impossible for someone his age. The gentle, wondering expression she had grown to love was still there, But now it was layered with something much more complex. Authority, sadness, and a weariness that spoke of burdens carried for far longer than his apparent 32 years. "Hello, Zara," he said softly. "I suppose you have some questions?" "David Chen, maintenance engineer for Earth Defense Forces," she said carefully. "That's who you told me you were. That's what all the diplomatic records say. But maintenance engineers don't have access to classified Nethrak intelligence. They don't understand quantum tunneling technology. They certainly don't reconfigure advanced alien starships during combat situations." David nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right. David Chen, the maintenance engineer, is real, by the way. He exists, he works for Earth Defense, and he did volunteer for this marriage. But that's not who I am." "Then who are you?" David was quiet for a long moment, studying the humming machinery around them. "The humans have a saying, the best place to hide a tree is in a forest. Earth's leadership didn't send their finest warrior or their greatest scientist to marry you, Zara. They sent their most dangerous secret, hidden in the guise of their most ordinary citizen." He moved to one of the control panels, his hands moving over the interfaces with the casual expertise of someone who had designed them himself. "My real name is David Chen, but I'm not a maintenance engineer. I'm the Director of Human Advanced Research and Development. I've been working on projects that your empire would consider impossible for a species as young as humanity." Zarathel felt her telepathic abilities reaching out automatically, trying to read his thoughts and emotions. What she encountered made her step backward in shock. David's mind was protected by barriers more sophisticated than anything she had ever encountered. Not walls or shields, but something far more elegant. A consciousness that existed on multiple levels simultaneously, with most of his true self hidden in dimensions her psychic senses couldn't reach. "You're not just human," she whispered. "I'm completely human." David replied gently, "But I'm not just any human. I represent something your empire's intelligence services suspected, but could never prove. Earth isn't the primitive world it appears to be. Zara, we've been hiding our true capabilities for decades, learning and growing while the galaxy dismissed us as harmless newcomers." He turned to face her fully, and she saw love and regret warring in his expression. "I married you because the mission required it, yes. But somewhere along the way it became so much more than duty. I fell in love with your curiosity, Your Honor, your genuine desire to bridge the gap between our peoples. Now I have to tell you the truth and hope it doesn't destroy what we've built together." Zarathel's mind raced as she processed the implications. If David represented Earth's hidden capabilities, then the political alliance she thought she was part of was something entirely different. Her marriage wasn't just diplomatic theater. It was a careful infiltration by a species far more advanced than anyone had realized. "The question now," David continued softly, "is what happens next. I've revealed myself to save this ship and everyone on it. But that means the secret is out. Your empire will soon learn that humanity isn't the junior partner in this alliance." Outside the ship, captured Nethrak vessels waited to be processed, their crews holding knowledge that could shift the balance of galactic power. And aboard the Sovereign's Will, a princess of the mightiest empire in the galaxy stood face to face with her husband, realizing that everything she thought she knew about the universe was about to change forever. Zarathel stared at her husband in stunned silence as the implications of his revelation cascaded through her mind. Everything she had believed about the balance of galactic power, about her empire's superiority, about the nature of their alliance with Earth, had just been shattered with a few quiet words. "How long?" she asked finally. "How long has humanity been hiding this level of technology?" David leaned against the engineering console, suddenly looking every bit as weary as his eyes suggested. "Active concealment? About 70 years. But we've been developing these capabilities for over a century. Your people first made contact with us 50 years ago, but we'd been watching the galactic community for much longer than that." "Watching us?" Zarathel felt a chill run down her spine. "From where?" "Our sensor networks monitor every system within 1,000 light-years of your planet." "Do they?" David smiled sadly. "Zara, your sensor networks see what we allow them to see. Humanity doesn't just live on Earth anymore. We have research stations in dimensions your science hasn't discovered yet. We've been studying galactic civilization, learning your technologies, understanding your weaknesses, all while playing the role of grateful newcomers who barely deserve a seat at the table." He activated a holographic display that showed star charts unlike anything she had ever seen. Instead of the three-dimensional galactic map she was familiar with, this display showed layers of space-time folded in ways that hurt to look at directly. "We call it dimensional engineering," David explained. "While your empire conquered planets and star systems, humanity learned to step outside conventional space entirely. Every major galactic power has been infiltrated. Every significant military installation has been mapped. Every technological advancement has been analyzed and improved upon." Zarathel's legs felt weak, and she found herself sitting heavily on a nearby maintenance platform. "You're saying that my people, the Vortanian Empire that has ruled 3 galaxies for millennia, has been completely compromised by a species we considered barely spacefaring?" "Not compromised," David said quickly. "Studied, understood, prepared for. There's a difference, Zara. Humanity never wanted to conquer or destroy your empire. We wanted to learn from you and eventually to become true partners. But we knew that partnership would be impossible if you saw us as equals from the beginning." He moved to stand before her, his expression gentle despite the enormity of what he was revealing. "Think about it from our perspective. Earth makes first contact with galactic civilization and discovers we're surrounded by ancient empires with weapons that could sterilize our entire planet without effort. What would you do in that situation?" I would try to learn everything I could about potential threats," Zarathel admitted reluctantly. "I would seek advantages wherever possible." "Exactly. So that's what we did." We smiled and played the part of enthusiastic newcomers while our best minds worked around the clock to understand and surpass everything you could throw at us. The goal was never aggression, Zara. It was survival and eventually genuine partnership between equals. Zarathel looked up at her husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The gentle engineer she had fallen in love with was still there, but now she understood the depths beneath that surface. "And our marriage? Was that part of the deception from the beginning?" David's face fell and she saw genuine pain in his eyes. "Originally, yes. When your father proposed the alliance, Earth's leadership saw an opportunity to place someone close to imperial royalty. I volunteered because I was qualified for the mission and because I believed it could help both our peoples." He knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in his. "But Zara, what happened between us was never part of any plan. I was supposed to maintain emotional distance while gathering intelligence. Instead, I fell completely and totally in love with the most amazing woman I've ever met. That part was real. That part is still real." Tears were running down her cheeks, though she hadn't realized she was crying. "How can I believe anything you tell me now? How do I know this isn't just another layer of deception? Because I'm risking everything by telling you the truth," David said softly. "My revealing myself during the battle means that human intelligence operations across the galaxy will be compromised. Agents who have spent decades building cover identities will have to be extracted. Research projects will have to be abandoned. All of that destruction just to save one ship." He squeezed her hands gently. "I chose you over the mission, Zara. I chose our love over humanity's greatest strategic advantage. My superiors are going to be furious with me, and they'll have every right to be." Before Zarathel could respond, an urgent chime from the ship's communication system interrupted them. "Princess, this is Commander Vorthak. We're receiving priority communications from Imperial Command. They want an immediate report on the battle, and they're asking specific questions about human involvement in our tactical success." Zarathel and David exchanged looks. The secret was already getting out. "I'll be right there," Zarathel responded. She stood up, wiping away her tears and drawing upon the royal composure she had been trained to maintain since childhood. "David, I need time to process all of this. But right now we need to decide how to handle the immediate political crisis you've created. What are you going to tell them?" David asked. Zarathel considered the question carefully. Her report would determine not just the future of human-Vortanian relations, but potentially the stability of the entire galactic political structure. If the Empire learned that humanity had been deceiving everyone for decades, the response would likely be immediate and devastating. "I'm going to tell them the truth," she said finally. "But not all of it, and not yet. I'm going to report that my human husband provided valuable technical assistance during the battle, demonstrating that Earth's technological capabilities may have been underestimated." David nodded slowly. "That buys us some time, but not much. Once they start investigating seriously, they'll uncover everything. Then we use that time wisely. Zarathel replied, her voice growing stronger as she found her footing in this new reality. You said humanity's goal was eventual partnership between equals. Maybe it's time to stop hiding and start negotiating. She turned toward the door, then paused to look back at her husband. David, I'm angry about the deception, and I'm terrified about what this means for the galaxy. But I'm not sorry I married you. Whatever happens next, we face it together. As she headed back to the bridge to begin the most important diplomatic conversation of her life, Zarathel reflected on the irony of the situation. She had married a man she thought was ordinary, only to discover he represented the most extraordinary secret in galactic history. Now she had to find a way to prevent that revelation from starting a war that could consume everything she loved. The universe, she realized, had a twisted sense of humor. But perhaps with careful handling, this crisis could become an opportunity for something unprecedented. A galaxy where ancient empires and ambitious newcomers could coexist as true partners rather than predator and prey. The emergency council session convened aboard the Vortanian flagship Eternal Dominion. 3 days after the battle, Zarathel found herself seated at the vast crystalline table surrounded by the most powerful beings in the Empire. Her father, Emperor Kethvar, presided over the gathering with his usual commanding presence, while military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and political advisors filled the remaining seats. The holographic displays around the chamber showed detailed analyses of the recent engagement, including sensor readings that had taken the Empire's best scientists days to properly interpret. What they had discovered was causing considerable alarm among the leadership. The technological innovations displayed during the battle represent advances beyond our current capabilities, reported Chief Science Advisor Melthorn, her 4 arms gesturing at complex equations floating in the air. The power optimization achieved in Princess Zarathel's ship showed an understanding of quantum energy manipulation that should not exist among human engineering. Admiral Vexthor, commander of the 5th Fleet, leaned forward aggressively. More concerning are the tactical recommendations that proved devastatingly effective against Nethrak forces. The targeting coordinates suggested intimate knowledge of enemy ship design that matches our most classified intelligence reports. Emperor Kethvar's piercing gaze fixed on his daughter. Zarathel, you were present during these events. Your report mentioned that your human consort provided technical assistance. We require a more detailed explanation of exactly what occurred. Zarathel had spent the past 3 days preparing for this moment, weighing her words carefully. She needed to reveal enough truth to satisfy the Council's concerns, while avoiding information that could trigger immediate military action against Earth. Your Majesty, my husband David demonstrated knowledge and capabilities far beyond what we were led to expect from human engineers. She began formally. During the crisis, he was able to optimize our ship's systems and provide tactical intelligence that proved crucial to our victory. How does a maintenance worker possess such capabilities? Demanded Intelligence Director Zornal, her cybernetic implants glowing as she accessed classified databases. Our files on David Chen show no advanced education or special training. Either our intelligence gathering was completely inadequate or we are dealing with deliberate deception. It appears to be the latter, Zarathel replied, choosing her words with extreme care. I believe Earth's leadership may have concealed the true extent of their technological development. David's abilities suggest that humanity has made significant advances beyond what they have publicly revealed. The chamber erupted in angry murmurs. Several military commanders began speaking at once about the implications of being deceived by a supposedly primitive species. Emperor Kethvar raised one massive hand for silence. You are suggesting that the humans have been lying to us for decades about their capabilities? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I am suggesting that they may have been more cautious about revealing their full potential than we realized, Zarathel replied diplomatically. Given the significant power imbalances in galactic politics, such caution would not be unreasonable for a newcomer species. Admiral Vexthor slammed his fist on the table. Caution? This is espionage on an unprecedented scale. They have made fools of us all while gathering intelligence about our defenses and capabilities. Perhaps, Zarathel said carefully, but we should consider their motivations before deciding on a response. If you were a new species making contact with civilizations thousands of years more advanced, would you immediately reveal everything you possessed? Or would you hold some capabilities in reserve until you better understood the political landscape? Chief Diplomat Aelsina, who had been quiet until now, nodded thoughtfully. The princess raises valid points. Our own first contact protocols recommend exactly such caution when encountering potentially superior civilizations. This is different, snapped Intelligence Director Zornal. We extended friendship and alliance to them based on their represented capabilities. They accepted our protection while secretly developing weapons that could potentially threaten us. Do we know that they've developed weapons? Zarathel asked. David's assistance was purely defensive in nature. He helped us save lives and defeat a common enemy. Emperor Kethvar studied his daughter with eyes that seemed to see everything. Zarathel, what is your assessment of your husband's loyalties? Where do his allegiances truly lie? This was the moment she had been dreading. Zarathel met her father's gaze steadily, drawing on every lesson in statecraft and diplomacy she had ever learned. Father, I believe David's primary loyalty is to the preservation of life and the prevention of unnecessary conflict. His actions saved not just our ship, but hundreds of Vortanian lives. He could have remained hidden and allowed the battle to unfold naturally, but he chose to reveal himself to protect your subjects. And his loyalty to you personally? The Emperor pressed. I believe it is genuine, she replied, allowing a hint of emotion to color her formal tone. Whatever deceptions exist at the political level, David's feelings for me are real. I stake my honor and my judgment on that assessment. The chamber fell silent as the assembled leaders processed this information. Finally, Admiral Vexthor spoke again, his voice grim with implication. If the humans have been hiding advanced capabilities, we need to know the full extent of their development. I recommend immediate deployment of investigation fleets to Earth system for comprehensive reconnaissance. That would be interpreted as an act of aggression, Chief Diplomat Aelsina warned. Such actions could destabilize our entire regional alliance structure. Better to act from a position of strength than to wait until they reveal weapons that could challenge our supremacy. Vexthor countered. Emperor Kethvar raised his hand again, ending the debate. Before we make any decisions about military action, I want to speak directly with this human who has caused such concern. Zarathel, arrange a private meeting with your husband. I will judge his character and intentions for myself. Zarathel felt her blood turn cold. A personal audience with the Emperor meant David would be subjected to the full force of her father's telepathic abilities and technological enhancement. If David had been hiding the true extent of his mental defenses, that secret would not survive such scrutiny. Of course, Your Majesty. When would you prefer this meeting to occur? Immediately, Kethvar replied. And Zarathel, understand that the future of human-Vortanian relations may depend on what I discovered during this conversation. I hope, for the sake of galactic stability, that your faith in your husband is justified. As the council session ended and the various officials departed to their duties, Zarathel remained seated, staring at the holographic displays that still showed analyses of the recent battle. In trying to protect both David and the broader political situation, she may have just arranged for both to be destroyed. She activated her personal communicator to contact her husband, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether their marriage had helped forge a new era of cooperation or had inadvertently triggered the greatest crisis in galactic history. David, she said when he responded, my father wants to meet with you, privately. And I think we're about to find out whether love really can conquer the vast differences between civilizations that were never meant to coexist. Emperor Kethvar's private study aboard the Eternal Dominion was a chamber that reflected the accumulated power of 10,000 years of Vortanian rule. Ancient artifacts from conquered worlds lined the walls, while holographic displays showed real-time data from across 3 galaxies. The Emperor himself sat behind a desk, carved from a single massive crystal that pulsed with inner light, his enhanced presence filling the room with barely contained energy that could crush most minds. David entered the chamber alone, having insisted that Zarathel remain outside despite her protests. He wore simple civilian clothing rather than formal diplomatic attire, and his demeanor remained calm despite standing before the most powerful being in known space. Your Imperial Majesty, David said, offering the precise bow required by Vortanian court protocol. I am honored by your invitation. Kethvar studied the human with eyes that could perceive across multiple spectrums of light and energy. What he saw was puzzling. David appeared completely human with no technological enhancements visible, yet there was something about his presence that seemed to create subtle distortions in the chamber's sophisticated sensor networks. "Sit," the Emperor commanded, gesturing to a chair that materialized from the floor using matter manipulation technology. "We have much to discuss, David Chen of Earth." David settled into the chair comfortably, showing no signs of intimidation despite the overwhelming display of power surrounding him. "I imagine you have questions about recent events." "Indeed." Kethvar leaned forward slightly, allowing his telepathic abilities to probe gently at David's mental barriers. What he encountered made him pause in surprise. Instead of the primitive human consciousness he expected, he found layers of protection that were not only sophisticated, but completely unfamiliar in their design. "Your mind is interesting," the Emperor observed carefully. "The defenses you possess are unlike anything in our database of known telepathic countermeasures. Humanity has always been innovative when it comes to protecting ourselves," David replied with a slight smile. "We've had to be, given the hostile universe we found ourselves in." Kethvar decided on a more direct approach. "Let us dispense with diplomatic niceties. My intelligence services have concluded that Earth has been systematically deceiving the galactic community about your technological capabilities. The question is, what are your true intentions?" David was quiet for a moment, considering his response. "Your Majesty, have you ever heard the human concept of speaking softly and carrying a big stick?" "I am familiar with many human philosophical concepts." "Explain your meaning." "It means that the most effective way to avoid conflict is to be capable of defending yourself while appearing non-threatening to potential enemies." David leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "When humanity first encountered galactic civilization, we were terrified. Here we were, a young species with primitive technology, surrounded by ancient empires that could erase us from existence without effort. So you chose to lie about your development. We chose to survive," David corrected gently, "while maintaining diplomatic relations and learning everything we could about our new neighbors. Yes, we concealed our true capabilities, but we also never used those capabilities aggressively. Every advancement we made was purely defensive in nature." Emperor Kethvar activated a holographic display showing star charts of human space. "Our analysts have detected anomalies suggesting hidden installations throughout your home system." "Explain these." David glanced at the display, then back at the Emperor with remarkable composure. "Your Majesty, you rule 3 galaxies through military might and technological superiority. You maintain your position by ensuring that no potential rival can challenge your power. If you discovered a species that possessed technology equivalent to your own, what would your response be?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kethvar found himself genuinely considering the implications. "I would view them as a potential threat requiring immediate evaluation." "Exactly, which is why humanity chose the path of careful concealment rather than open development. We wanted time to understand the galactic political structure and our place within it before revealing our full capabilities. And now? What does humanity want now?" David stood up slowly, moving to look out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive viewport. "We want what we've always wanted, Your Majesty. To survive, to grow, to explore the universe and learn from the amazing civilizations we've encountered. But we want to do it as partners, not as subjects or conquered territories." "Partners?" The Emperor's voice carried a note of dangerous amusement. "The Vortanian Empire does not have partners. We have subjects, allies, and enemies. Nothing more." David turned back to face him, and for the first time since entering the chamber, his expression carried absolute seriousness. "Then perhaps it's time for the Vortanian Empire to evolve, Your Majesty. Because the universe is changing whether you acknowledge it or not." The Emperor felt a chill that had nothing to do with environmental systems. "Explain." "The Nethrak Collective represents only one of the threats emerging from beyond our known space. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected evidence of civilizations that make current galactic powers look like children playing with toys. The age of isolated empires maintaining control through superior force is ending. The future belongs to those who can adapt, cooperate, and combine their strengths." David moved closer to the Emperor's desk, his voice taking on the authority Zarathel had heard during the battle. "Humanity offers the Vortanian Empire something unprecedented, a true partnership between equals. We can share technologies, knowledge, and perspectives that neither of us could develop alone. Together, we could face the coming challenges and perhaps even thrive in the new reality that's approaching. And if we refuse this partnership? David's expression remained calm, but something shifted in the air around him. The chamber's sensors registered energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible for an unenhanced human. Then humanity will continue on its path alone as we always have. We'll adapt to whatever challenges arise, protect ourselves and those we care about, and hope that the galaxy's established powers find their own ways to survive what's coming. Emperor Kethavar realized that he was not negotiating from a position of strength. The quiet human standing before him represented capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. More importantly, David's obvious love for Zarathel created an opportunity for peaceful cooperation that might not exist otherwise. "You love my daughter," the Emperor observed. David's stern expression immediately softened. "More than my own life, Your Majesty. Meeting Zarathel changed everything for me. She's helped me understand that building bridges between civilizations is more important than maintaining strategic advantages. And she loves you, despite learning about your deceptions." "I hope so," David replied with genuine vulnerability. "I know I've violated her trust, but I'm trying to make amends by offering complete honesty about humanity's capabilities and intentions." Cathvar made his decision. "Very well. You will arrange for formal diplomatic contact between Earth's true leadership and the Imperial Council. We will negotiate this partnership you propose with full disclosure of capabilities on both sides." "And Zarathel?" The Emperor's expression softened slightly as he thought of his daughter. "Zarathel has shown wisdom in seeing potential where others saw only deception. Your marriage will continue, and perhaps serve as a symbol of the cooperation you envision." David's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise that humanity will prove worthy of your trust." "See that you do," Kethvar replied, "because if this partnership fails, the consequences will be catastrophic for both our peoples." As David left the chamber, Emperor Kethvar remained seated, contemplating the enormous changes that lay ahead. His daughter had indeed married an ordinary maintenance worker, who turned out to be extraordinary. Now it remained to be seen whether their love could help forge a new era of galactic cooperation, or whether the revelations would ultimately destroy everything they both held dear. Outside in the corridor, Zarathel waited anxiously for her husband. When she saw David emerge unharmed, she rushed into his arms with relief that transcended political considerations. "So," she whispered against his chest. "Where do we go from here?" "Forward," David replied, holding her close. "Together, toward whatever future we can build between the stars." The universe had tested them with deception, revelation, and the vast differences between their peoples. But love, it seemed, really could create bridges strong enough to span the gulfs between civilizations. And perhaps that was the most human power of all.